We are back with another edition of Quick Hits, your rapid-fire rundown of some of the hottest topics in high school sports and the Chicago Catholic League. Today, we're tackling 7 topics in just under 30 minutes, from the top candidates for Player of the Year in the Chicago Catholic League to the growing trend of high school stadium naming rights, as well as the rising challenges facing athletic directors and coaches. We've got it all. We'll also dive into how regional and national exposure boosts programs and who really holds the power in Illinois high school sports, the IHSA or the Illinois State Legislature.
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
The Varsity Voices podcast, part of the Varsity Voices Media Network, where we talk high school sports, the Chicago Catholic League football, and everything in between. Please like, subscribe, and follow wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to follow us on social media as well. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Frevaletti, and with me is your other host, Dan Frevaletti. And Dan, before we get into our 7 topics, I have a surprise topic for you that I want you to weigh in on.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Is it timed?
No, it's not timed. And I don't think it'll take you long to respond.
All right.
So,
yes.
So have you seen the one of the hottest trends or one of the top trends in social media over the past maybe week, couple days?
Maybe.
All right. So who would win a fight between 100 men and 1 gorilla?
I have seen this.
All right. So what do you think? You tell me.
I think it's the 100 men.
So why do you think that?
I think you could gang up on it. I think it's like half dozen on each arm. I think you get that thing in a prone position and go to town on it with everyone coming in and taking a swipe. It's an awful topic.
So what if it were like one of those big silverbacks?
I wouldn't want to be one of the first ones in. I would not want to lead the charge. That's for sure.
All right.
I think you'd end up with probably 80 men standing at the end.
Well, I went a level deeper. Okay, so I was thinking, 100 men. If I had to assemble 100 men, the 100 that I would assemble, we would get our asses kicked by that gorilla. And part of it is because, first of all, you wouldn't have anybody who would want to go in first.
Right.
Yeah, maybe you got 20, 30, 40 guys who are willing to rush that gorilla, right? But I think everybody would be hesitating because whoever that gorilla latches onto first is gone, right?
They're in a lot of trouble.
And I think it would require some coordination, right? As far as, tactics and those kinds of things. And the 100 men I would assemble, there'd be no coordination at all. It'd just be running crazily toward the gorilla and screaming, and the gorilla would have a heyday with us.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to run toward it, and at the very end, shove a guy into the gorilla first.
Yeah, and get them distracted, and then the rest of the guys jump on top.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd have some sacrificial lambs in there.
You would. Yeah, and I don't think I have 100 people or even 10 people that I could assemble that would willing to be a sacrificial lamb.
That's a good part of that question is, all right, so you're one of 100, where do you fall? If you go with there's 80 men standing at the end, are you one of the 80 or one of the 20? Are you like in the middle of a baseball fight where you're kind of backing up and just moving and dodging,
right?
And throwing your hands in the air like you're really upset, but you're backing up the whole time.
Right.
You're just about ready to dive in.
Just putting up your dukes, but doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Backing up the whole time after that initial rush.
Yeah, I'm getting my back foot set so I can really throw with some power here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you probably got one shot if the gorilla gets close to you. You better knock it for a loop.
Yeah, and that's the problem. All 100 guys, I think, would be in their mind that gorilla is going to grab my arm or grab a part of me and is going to rip it off, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you
All
poke
right.
him in the eyes like a shark?
Probably.
What if he put up his hand like the Three Stooges? Whoa, he blocked it.
This gorilla was taught that move. Yeah. All right. Well,
All
good.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've weighed in on one of the top trending topics across social media. So that's good. All right. So this is our Quick Hits, Dan, our Quick Hits episode where we're going to cover 7 topics and we're going to try and keep each of the topics to under 4 minutes. And if need be, I am going to buzz or play something that says you're talking too long. All right. So
Did you practice it? Should we practice, see if it works?
we can practice it. Hold on. Let me see. How about this one? Wait.
I like that one.
Is that or this one?
I feel like I actually feel that one in the back of my head.
Yes, I feel it between my ears.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the only other one we got, so be aware of this, okay?
All right, I'm ready.
You're ready.
Ready.
All right. So
Wait a minute.
All right,
4 minutes each or 4 minutes total?
No, 4 minutes total. I said
right.
30 minutes, under
All
30
right.
minutes. So 7 topics, 4 minutes total, 28 minutes.
Okay.
There's no way we're holding to that, but
No.
Okay, so first topic I wanted to cover is top candidates for Player of the Year in the Chicago Catholic League.
Getting right into it. Okay.
Yeah, going right into it. I think that's good. So, when I looked at this, I was thinking, okay, who are top candidates? And maybe over the past couple years, you would have immediately looked at quarterbacks. At least I would have, like Jack Elliott immediately comes to mind. But, when I'm thinking about this coming year and this coming season, is the caliber of the wide receivers that are in the Chicago Catholic League this year. So I'm looking at Quentin Burrell, right, from Mount Carmel.
Yeah, he's one of my top ones.
Looking at Trenton Walker from Nazareth,
for sure.
Right? Another wide receiver, Zach Washington from St. Francis.
Also one of my favorites. Yep.
So those are like my top 3 from a wide receiver standpoint. But then there's a couple of quarterbacks that, high profile, get a lot of exposure. I think they're going to have really good years too. And one is Israel Abrams from Montini.
Yeah.
He's got to be on your list.
Yeah,
right?
He's got to be on the list. He's definitely there.
Yeah, Trey Taylor from Carmel.
New Nebraska commit as of this afternoon, which is exciting.
Yeah, it is. And then I had a couple of dark horses on the offensive side of the ball. And one is a quarterback, one is a wide receiver. Both of their first names are CJ.
Okay.
So who do you think? CJ Gray. Right?
CJ Gray jumps to the top of mine.
Yep, from Brother Rice, quarterback. The other is the wide receiver from Montini, CJ Harkins, who kind of flew under the radar last year just because there were, when you think about who the ball went to a lot from Montini's standpoint, it was Santino Florio. But CJ Harkins made some big plays and some big moments in some big games, and he's coming back. And, with Izzy Abrams is going to be looking for somebody to throw to, I think it's going to be CJ Harkins. So
that's exciting. Yeah, that's definitely a good under the radar pick, Joe. And I had a lot of the same ones as you. The one I had that I guess might be under the radar a little bit is Stephen Armbruster, quarterback for St. Rita.
Good one.
Yeah, all conference player last year. Really good years. Got some weapons returning. Might be leaning on him a little more. In both the pass and run. He's a dual threat. So I think St. Rita's poised for a really good year, and I think he's going to be one to keep an eye on. And a couple defensive players, Joe. And maybe you have a couple on there, but I think we both agree that Tommy Thice from Fenwick is someone to keep an eye on.
Yes, he
And
is on my list too, Dan, for sure.
he's a playmaker for sure. But I also have put Jalen Torres from St. Francis, D lineman, on there. Great
pick.
player, two-way player. And I don't know if that hurts, helps, or makes any difference at all as far as gaining stats, on the defensive side of the ball. But we'll see where he focuses. And then another one, Joe, that I think we really have to watch: in Campbell, Joliet Catholic defensive end. Double-digit sacks last year. Poised for a big year. Getting some offers out there, but probably would like to maybe jump into another tier of recruit. I don't know. That's total speculation, but has the ability to do so. I think with a big year, and I think you're going to see a really big year from Ian Campbell.
Yeah, and he was one of our top dogs last year, right?
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Yeah. So, for several people or people who don't follow the Chicago Catholic League maybe as closely as we do, and some others, might not be aware of him, but we definitely are. We love the way he played last year. So
yeah. And college recruiters are, I know he's all over the MAC, as far as with offers. So yeah, he's not a secret, but he just might be someone who, just for whatever reason, position, defensive player, has been overlooked to this point. I don't think that happens this year.
No, I don't either. Okay, so next topic, Dan, is there was a former Chicago Catholic League player who was picked in this year's draft. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, C.J. West.
C.J. West. And where did he go?
Nazareth Academy.
Nazareth Academy, right.
Yep.
I think he's a 2020 grad from Nazareth. Went in the 4th round to the 49ers with the 113th overall pick. 6'1", 316-pound defensive tackle. Was he that big when he was at Naz? Do you remember?
He wasn't. He was listed. It's funny because I went back and watched some film. So I was the O-line coach at Bennett at the time. So we had the pleasure of worrying about CJ and others on that defense forever and ever. But he was listed at 270. He looked like he may have been a little bigger, but I saw him this year at Indiana when they played Northwestern, and I was like, who is that guy? He was huge. His shoulders looked twice as wide as they did on the video from high school. It was unbelievable. And he was pretty much unblockable in high school, but he moves way better now, down the line. Getting to the quarterback, he's a heck of a player, and he was like I said, unblockable. And the thing that you notice about him, very violent as a football player. And when he hit you, even if it's a 1 yard running play where he makes a tackle, you knew about it. And he took the opportunity to made sure he grounded his feet and hit you with purpose.
Yeah. I watched a little bit of film, some of his highlight stuff from, the stuff that was put out there before the draft. And, you talked about violence. One of the things I noticed, and everybody talks about, at the combines and watching different highlight clips, is his hands, right? And how physical he is with his hands and how he gets them out there. As a coach, Dan, and, I coached a little bit as well, and when you're a defensive lineman, tackle, defensive end, if you are physical with your hands and violent with your hands, you are going to have a lot of success. And that's exactly what CJ West does.
Yeah. You play the game with your hands and feet, and it is, he's really good at it, and it's funny because, you may or may not remember, one of the things that you notice about young high school players is they are apprehensive about throwing their hands out there in harm's way, right? They're willing to try and let the shoulder pads and maybe the face mask do a lot of the work. And that's just not how the great ones do it. If you have got to be able to throw your hands, you've got to learn, get your hands out there, or you'll be better off. Even as a defensive player, if you're moved a little bit, by big offensive linemen. If you have hands on and can get separation, you're in a great place. And CJ West does a great job of that. I'm looking forward to following his career in San Francisco.
Yeah, me too. And the other thing in looking at this, I thought, look at Nazareth and who they've put into the NFL, right? They've got JJ McCarthy, who was at Naz before he went to IMG, right?
Yep.
Julian Love.
Yep.
Another player. So, if you go further back, you're looking at maybe Donovan McNabb, right, from Mount Carmel. Trying to think of who else, maybe from the Chicago Catholic League. But, Naz has got now 3 that I'm at least aware of, right, that are playing in the NFL. So that's quite the track record.
Yeah, and it'll be kind of cool to follow as we do this podcast. Who makes their mark like that? From let's say last season to when they graduate or when they're eligible for the draft, and so that'll be fun to follow.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that has started to gain a little bit of traction, definitely more exposure lately, is naming rights for high school stadiums, whether it be football stadiums or, any other type of facilities that high schools might have. And really, this is coming from, and we've talked about this many times, you've got to follow the money, Dan.
Sure.
And, this is happening in high school now where, the programs, the athletics programs at high schools, they're all fighting for dollars, right? And they're all looking for additional ways where they're going to make or able to add to their coffers. And this is one of them, high school naming rights. When I was looking at this, I thought, how much money would a high school make from giving naming rights to some organization, some company, whatever it is. But, some of the numbers that I've seen starting to be thrown out there are, there was a high school in Ohio, entered into a 10-year agreement with an electric company for $210,000 a year, right? Another school in Florida, naming rights for its high school football stadiums, $140,000 per year. School in another one in Florida, $120,000 per year. And it all goes to, in a lot of these cases, it all goes to their athletic departments. So this is just another one of those trends where things are pushing down, as you and I have talked about multiple times, pushing down from, the pro level to the college level, now to high school, naming rights for stadiums. And there's big money involved.
Yeah, I can, and it's funny. It makes sense. You've got thousands of people in one place. It's great advertising, and there used to be banners. I know some schools have done banners or whatever on the fences, and had some advertising. But gone are the days when you name it after the old athletic director who was there for 40 years, or maybe the name of the field is now like a paragraph long. It's right. The so-and-so field at this stadium and vice versa. And, the lights are sponsored by them and the concession stand is sponsored by them. And so it's a sign of the times.
It is. And it's another thing that might cause some disparities, right? Because you've got high schools that are in affluent areas, right? And then you've got a ton of high schools that are in less wealthy communities, however you want to put it. But, you're going to see if this continues as a trend. And we've talked about this with several other things where the rich get richer and, those who don't have the ability to take advantage of some of these things are, going to fall behind.
Yeah. And I would imagine if the right company is interested in doing that, it could really affect your business, and whether it's a small company where you see an uptick in your business, a chiropractor or something, or it's a big company, where you feel like, all right, I've got my choice when I go to buy a car or get my cell phone, of where I want to go, I'm going to go to the one that supports my high school.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's definitely benefits to it. If you look forward and look at, okay, what might be some of the some of the drawbacks of something like this, and now obviously you can find them, but again, I think this is something which is another one of those trends, which is a train on the tracks that you are not going to be able to stop.
Yeah, if anyone's building new stadiums, it's certainly something to think about.
Yes. All
Or
right.
I guess renaming old ones too.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So you and I talked a little bit today, Dan, about our episode, right? And we were talking about the different topics that we wanted to discuss. And one of those that you brought up, which I think is really, really interesting, is, what might the benefits of, regional, national exposure for high school football programs, what might those benefits be to not only the program, but the kids who are within that program? So take us a little bit further into that, Dan, a little bit more detail.
Well, I thought about it in terms of scheduling, and we talked about early season schedules, and while you and I love when the schedule is really interesting between if a Catholic League school chooses to play another Catholic League school, well, we see that Mount Carmel is going to play Moeller, right? Another regional national power, and I thought, I wonder if that becomes attractive because you are going to be able to tell potential students that you play one or two games a year excuse me, on ESPN, or get that regional or national exposure by taking on the Hun Academy or taking on IMG or going to play some of these schools. I wonder if it becomes if it's a selling point at some point for your program to say, hey, we are looking beyond our schedule. Obviously, schedule or our conference division's number one, win the division, make your mark in the state playoffs. You can do all those things, but there's also room for a couple really high level exposure games if you want to do that. So I think that might be a trend too, Joe, that some teams choose to do that. There's some risk involved, right? Because you can get a loss. And but typically, I'm guessing the benefits, outweigh the negatives when you look at it, and if you're the right type of program.
Yeah, and I think you said the right thing, or something that resonated for me, Dan. You said selling points, right? And I think that's important these days, considering the current environment within high school and within college. As far as transferring, as far as wanting to get noticed, getting exposure. So I think the benefits of that regional or national exposure. You've got increased recruiting opportunities, right? The prestige of the program is definitely enhanced. We've talked about NIL and branding type things and opportunities. With that increased program exposure, you probably got a boost in your NIL and branding opportunities for players. I mean, there's media and sponsorship revenue. There's money that comes in. You get better facilities, better resources. All those things. A great pipeline to the next level. At the
Yeah.
Power 5 type thing.
Yeah, recruiting advantages. If
Yes.
there's always college coaches in the stands if there's a high profile game like that. And Joe, this isn't just a CCL thing.
No.
This is available to any school that wants to dip their toe in the water.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so let's go on to our next topic, and it's something that has come up in my mind over the past couple months, primarily in regards to some of the episodes that we've done and things that we've talked about, whether it's related to transfers, whether it's related to NIL, whether it's related to parental pressure, scheduling challenges like you just mentioned. But I can't the job of being an athletic director as well as a head coach at a high school has got to be getting more and more difficult over time here, especially with some of those things that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, and Joe, I think about what you've said on a number of occasions, and you're more for opening things up, as far as transfers and some of this and NIL and just kind of letting the market figure it out, so to speak. And where I'm always like, well, maybe there needs to be some way to rein it in and keep some of the traditional items, on the making sure that they're part of for our case football. But what you said is that it's going to put the pressure on coaches, and in this case, coaches and athletic directors, to up their efforts. They have got to think of all these things as they project, what their program is going to look like in 5 years, and how do we get there, and what kind of teams do we want to build, and where can we differentiate ourselves. All that stuff becomes involved in the coaching and being an athletic director, and it's all new. That's the thing, it's all kind of new, but it really puts a lot of pressure on you as a coach or administrator to make sure that you've got a package, to discuss. And again, this is not just Catholic League stuff. This is going to be for everybody. There's schools that are, kids are choosing between the local public school and maybe the Catholic school or the private school. And, I'm guessing there's going to be both coaches and athletic directors that program in place or a package that they can show this is what our 5-year plan looks like, with regional games, with NIL, with transfers, and how do we keep recruiting or keep our kids here. All that stuff it's a lot of work. I would imagine you might start to see some turnover, that coaches who don't want to deal with that stuff, and are ready to pass it on to a different generation that's kind of grown up in this, so to speak. But yeah, the job's got to be tough.
It is tough. And you've mentioned this before, that maybe there needs to be additional resources from an administrative standpoint at the high schools, in order to position the schools better for some of the, for the current environment and some of the things that are coming. I think what some of the colleges are doing, and I'll call it, they're hiring or putting in place general managers, right?
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen at the high school level too.
Oh my gosh.
If the athletic director cannot handle it, right? And just with all the stuff that athletic directors have to do already, to put something like that on top of them too, I just don't think it's something they're going to be able to do.
Yeah, just dealing with a bus schedule alone for an athletic director is a challenge. You'll probably see bigger athletic departments. So
yeah,
they never call them GMs, but they might have assistant ADs in charge of whatever, pick a topic. And so you've got 3 or 4 assistant ADs that each have tasks, that either free the athletic director up to do some of this stuff, or they are in charge of a certain aspect of a program that hasn't had to have been worried about to this point.
Yeah. And I'm going to say and, not but. And the quality of those individuals has got to be of such a point, or such a level, that they're able to understand and deal with some of the new things that are happening within high school athletics these days. So
yeah,
it can't just be, here you're going to be in charge of our NIL, right? And it's some guy who, prior to that was a history teacher, right? Now they made him an assistant AD. That kind of thing isn't going to work. It's going to have to be a little bit more, professional in nature, I guess is how I would put it.
Yeah. And so what does that mean then, right? More money.
More money.
Those salaries don't come out of thin air.
No, you've got to get that $200,000 per year for naming rights of your new stadium.
It definitely would be something that could drive a program.
Yes, for sure. All right, so you tell me, I'm going to pose this question to you, Dan, and this is regarding the state of Illinois. So we'll go from maybe more of a kind of national focus to a very specific focus to the state of Illinois. And you and I have covered some of the things that are going on within the IHSA, as well as the Illinois General Assembly, some of the bills that have been introduced, whether it's around right to play, whether it's around transfers, whether it's around NIL. Over the next 5 years, who do you think is going to have more influence in the state of Illinois on high school athletics? Do you think it'll be the Illinois General Assembly, or do you think it'll be the IHS?
I think it's probably going to be the General Assembly if everything remains the same. I think that seems to be a trend as well. Where people don't look at the state association or the IHSA as, all right, that's not the final voice. I'm going to go to a lawyer and who's going to bring it before court. So I think if the legislators can do things to avoid that, or to have things that are written in law, that they will save the associations in some respects. And Joe, I have a question for you on this. Do you know the IHSA structure a little better than I do? Do you know if they have a legislative liaison?
They definitely do.
Yeah.
Yes. But the executive director, I think, takes, he is out there in front as well in regards to legislation, but they have somebody who, call him a lobbyist, call him a legislative liaison, whatever it might be. They definitely have somebody on staff for that purpose as well.
Okay. Yeah. That person is probably pretty important, pretty busy, I'm sure, these days.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they could work together, I don't know what that looks like, and I've often thought if the IHSA could put rules in place that were somehow backed by the state of Illinois, which might mean that they just have to pass a law, which then makes them, the more important one, which is where I think it's going.
Yeah, I do too. I think the Illinois General Assembly is probably going to, be more important, or be doing things which are more impactful to high school athletics than the IHSA has done or will be doing. I think from kind of this point forward, and we've seen some of the legislation introduced this year, I think that's going to be a yearly thing. And maybe there's some way that they're going to be able to collaborate too as they go forward. So, you know what? This is going to happen. We are going to pass this. And IHSA, we're going to give you the ability to oversee it, regulate it, whatever it might be. But, this is going to be the law, and you're going to have to abide by it, and you're going to have to figure out a way to make it work within the high school environment.
Yeah, that's probably how it's going to work.
Okay, all right. So last topic. Look at us. We're pretty close on time, and no dings so far.
Right. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I've been, as I know you've been, doing a lot of research. We follow social media as well pretty closely on X and on Instagram and some of the other social media sites. One of the things I noticed over the past, and this is really the past couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, maybe month, is one of our in-state schools, Western Illinois University, has really been active, not only in the state of Illinois, but with the Chicago Catholic League. They're coming in and they are talking to the different coaches at some of the schools. They're talking to a lot of the players, and they're making a lot of offers now, for kids, which I think is a really good approach. I think it's good for Western Illinois, the state of Illinois. Obviously, I like to see kids stay home in Illinois and go to college and play there. But I really like the kind of aggressive nature for Western Illinois right now and what they're doing, especially in regards to the Chicago Catholic League and making sure that they are all over it and getting some of these really good football players who maybe aren't getting some of these offers from some other schools.
Yeah, and we've said it a long time, whether we've said it on a podcast or not. But man, if I was a recruiter, I would be all over the Catholic League. You know the reputation of the league, you know the type of competition they play. You kind of got your head around it as far as the level of player at a specific school, and if they are successful versus teams A, B, and C, that kid can play, and so it makes a ton of sense and for Western to do that. Now I don't know if they have a change in staff, Joe, or are they? That's always kind of that would be an interesting tidbit. Do you have that information?
I do. They brought in a new head coach in December of 2023. His name is Joe Davis, and last year in 2024, their last season, they had the most wins in a season since 2017. And I think they only had 4 wins. So it wasn't like a ton of wins, but, they made progress. And the staff he's put in place, too, are some pretty high profile, assistant coaches and staff members that he has been able to put in place. And I think it's showing. I saw, some of the kids had talked to from a recruiting standpoint, and not only the head coach, but 2 or 3 of the assistant coaches as well. So I think Joe Davis has got the right formula here, and he's staying close to home. He knows there's great football being played in Illinois and the Chicago Catholic League, and he is going after it full.
Yeah, well, like I said, makes sense. It's drivable. You get to be in beautiful Macomb, and play some good football,
Yeah.
So yeah, it just makes sense, even from a budget. If you go follow the money again and look at the budget, it's something that they can recruit hard and still not have to get on an airplane.
Yes. All right. Well, that's it, Dan. That's our topics. We try to stick to our time level, and we're pretty close. No dings for any of us. As always, we appreciate everybody listening. Do us a favor and make sure you like, follow, or subscribe to us wherever you're listening from. We will be back, as always, next week with some additional topics and things to talk about. And as always, we appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you soon.